Have you ever wanted something so desperately, or you've really wanted it for a very long time, and you work towards it, and you literally put your life and soul into it, but it just doesn't seem to come? That can be one of the most frustrating things to have to deal with. And that's exactly what Qwan Ho and myself are going to be unpacking today. Qwan, what? Hi, welcome.
Hi, Candice. Thank you for having me today.
It's such a privilege to have you. Quan and my paths have crossed and there's so much alignment. But before we even go into that, tell the listeners a little bit more about you.
So, Candice and listeners, I actually come from a financial advisory background. I was a financial advisor for 23 years, and I kind of start off with that because it gives a bit of backing to where my mindset was or is in a sense, coming from corporate, dealing with money, and after 23 years of working in a toxic environment, because let's face it, money can be toxic to quite a lot of people. I actually shifted into the space of helping people figure out their money story, because at the end of the day, every decision we make has a financial impact on us, and how we show up is so important. And for me, I think the best way to describe it is using the analogy of a Japanese art form called kintsugi, where we take broken pieces of pottery and put them back together and then fill that with gold to make it even more beautiful and even stronger than what it was before. And that's what I do with companies, with businesses, and with individuals. I step in and I am able to see different parts or different aspects of the person or of the business. And it, being in that space and also and being from an outside perspective, I'm able to see different versions of the bigger picture, or the whole picture. And so what I do is I guide the people that I work with to actually see that vision for themselves. So I've learned that I can't paint the picture for them. They need to be able to paint the picture themselves. So it's really just about holding the space and allowing them to see these different parts of themselves that a lot of the time may feel fractured or broken, and pull those together and actually strengthen them through systems, through processes, and different tools to create that vessel, that whole vessel again. So sometimes we feel broken and we feel, bits and pieces of us lying around. It's really about just bringing it back together, centering ourselves and grounding ourselves, so that we can see ourselves from a different perspective.
That really
So
does sound like a gift that you've been given and a different way to be able to see things. I know that that's what you do a lot for me. You help me to see things differently. It really is a gift. So from my side, everything that I bring forth into the world has come through personal experience. I had to get it wrong a whole lot of times until I
yeah,
finally got it right. And I think I've been very lucky that I've always had a yearning to learn and to understand, maybe to my detriment because I've always been very impatient to have all the pieces of the puzzle fit together before they were ready to fit together. But yes, I know what I know through personal experience only because I had to get it wrong, and sometimes a hell of a lot of times before I got it right. So today we're going to be
mhm.
speaking about that feeling, that energy that we emit, that we put out, that we live our life with when we want something so desperately. Like, I just take a moment and think about things that you maybe want now, or maybe things you've wanted in the past, but you've really wanted them. Can you name one or two of those?
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is getting into a relationship. If you're single and you're looking for someone, and you've got this ideal vision of what it is that you want in someone. You paint this picture and then you kind of put the energies out there, put the vibes out there, speak to friends, whatever the case may be, and nothing comes about. You become a little bit more needy in a sense. You start going onto the dating apps, things like that, even going out into the real world, and the thing is, if you're showing up from a space of needing something, um, people can feel that, you know. Being a female, I'm sure you've seen or had a lot of guys come across, you've come across a lot of males or you know, potential courters that seemed needy, and you could feel that energy before they even open their mouth. And so that's really what it's about is, you know, sometimes we so desperately want something that we actually believe that it's a need, and we actually don't need it, because that neediness comes from a space of ourselves actually feeling fragmented or not whole as such. And so looking externally for that answer is what actually starts frustrating us, especially when we don't get what we feel we need. Another thing is money. You know, a lot of the times we feel that, you know, we need money so we can pay for the bond or pay for the rent, so we can buy food, so we can send these kids to school. All of these things that we feel we need. Um, and then we act from a space of desperation. So we try and chase after that which we want. So, you know, being a guy, if I wanted you know, to go out and find a girl to get lucky with, and you know, I'm in a needy space, they will feel that energy already. Where if I come from a space where that's not something that I need, uh, it's something obviously that I would want or I would like. It changes the dynamic completely, and it changes the energy exchange between people as well. And the same goes with money. You know, we think money is this external entity, but you know, what if we thought about money as a person? You know, how would you want to attract that person into your life? Telling them, listen, I need to pay the bond, I need to pay the rent, this, that, whatever. And some people do that. I know someone who has a career in marrying men, getting divorced, getting alimony, and writing books about divorce around her experiences. And her need is really, you know, to create this content and you know, but her what she actually wants at the end of the day is to have a deeper, more meaningful relationship with someone else, which she's failing to get because she's coming from and operating from the space of being needy, of want, you know, of believing that they want this so badly that they can't live without it.
Now I'm going to stretch you a little bit.
Okay.
So I'll never forget going to coffee with a friend of mine, and I was very desperate to pay my rent a couple of years ago. And I was stressing, and I said to him, like, I desperately need money. And he said exactly what you've just said. That's the problem. I'm like, what's the problem? He's like, it's because you need it. You need to not need it. I'm like,
Mm.
so when I drive into my complex or my estate and they block my fingerprint and they don't allow me into my house, kind of becomes a need.
Hmm.
So,
So,
yeah,
mhm.
sorry. There we go.
No,
That's a
carry on.
question. How do you not need something? How do you make something, your brain and everything inside of you and like logic is telling you that it's not a want, it's a need. I have to have a house to sleep in. How
Hmm.
do you make that not a need?
It's a very difficult space to operate from, number one. And so the thing is, and it's almost like wanting to get fit as well. We want to have a healthy, sexy, ripped body. Um, and we do what we think we need to do, go to the gym, all of that. But where it actually starts is in our mind. It's our mindset. And that's why, and what your friend said, and I agree wholeheartedly, is when we come from that space of needing something, um, you know, that just that thought and, you know, just taking it a step backwards again, is really about, you know, understanding how things become reality. And things become reality through thoughts. You know, everything that is in existence came from a thought, either from yourself or from someone else. And so thinking that you need to be in this home and you need to be able to pay the rent, that's a thought that's been processed or been planted as well into your mind. And as soon as we start saying, well, what if I don't need this? There are, and I'm using a silly example that, you know, that my parents used to use with me around food. You know, there's starving people all over China and all over the world. You need to eat all your food on your plate, you know, and that conditioning led me to need to finish everything on my plate to the point where I was quite obese. You know, so it takes a lot of effort to to reprogram our minds because the neural pathways in there, believing something that we need is so ingrained within us that we fail to see alternative options, or we fail to see it from a different perspective. So, again, when we start operating not from a space of need or lack, the universe actually shows up for us. And the universe shows up for us, especially now in the case of, if you don't have the money to pay the rent, the universe is saying, well, you have the money already. You just need to, it's not about needing the money. It's the need to actually figure out how to get that money into your possession,
Mm, mm. Okay.
right?
So I'm actually
And
being a bit of a brat because I have a
yeah.
couple of answers, but I'm going to pin it
Hmm.
because there's a couple of layers I want to go deeper.
Okay.
First of all, that need, you've spoken about money, and that's just a common one. Relationships is a very common one, but it can be so much more. It can be the job that you want. It's I have a friend that's been wanting to relocate for years, and she just, every ounce of her just wants to be in another province.
Hmm.
And so I just want to get into what it feels like to want something so desperately and not be getting it. Because for me, it affects everything. My
Hmm.
life is consumed by it. My thoughts are consumed by it. My decisions are impacted by it. I am not as clear. Like I'm probably not going to make the clearest, most responsible decisions because it almost feels like I'm in fight or flight.
Hmm.
So that's how I know it's not working.
Hmm.
If it was working, it would not feel like that. And that's the first way I go, what am I not seeing? And what this is not working.
Hmm.
Show me what I could be doing better. So that's the first thing. The next thing, and you have touched on it, around our conditioning is why do we do this? Let's just touch on this. Why do we desperately need things with all our being and then have this desperate, needy energy that we put out? Why do we do that? You said
So
conditioning.
yeah, so exactly that. It goes into our conditioning as all the way through our formative years and growing up, in that we are painted this ideal image of what our lives should be like. Go to school, get the degree, get a high-paying job, get the wife or the husband, get the 2.5 children, and blah blah blah. And that's all this external stuff that's been pushed onto us. One of my things that I love tapping into is the philosophy of Buddhism, that we are whole already, and that we have everything that we need already. And and we get to this desperate space, this desperate state, uh, because again, we feel that we're lacking something within ourselves. There's something missing. We need to be in a different province because why? It will make our lives a little bit better. Maybe it's because I want to live by the sea, or I want to live overseas and earn dollar, whatever the case may be. And it's really about just taking a step back and just reflecting on yourself and saying, well, am I really broken? Am I really lacking anything right now? And if the immediate answer is no, then we can take a pause and we can, for I'm just trying to think, just for lack of a better thing to do is you just do a little breath exercise, breathe in, calm the nervous system down, and allow those emotions to be processed because they come from somewhere, and they show up constantly because we haven't been able to work through them. So having to want to move to a different uh, province, or desperate to earn more money to pay the rent, it's because again we feel that there's a lack, and that we're not whole. So just taking that
Absolutely.
moment to say, hold on, what do I actually need right now? Not
Mm,
not tomorrow, not the next day, or not next week or next month, but what do I need right now? And as soon as we do that, we shift the energy state within ourselves. And by doing that, that allows us to put out a different thought frequency. Rather than saying, I need to, I wish I could be there. Just take a breath in, calm down, and think about why. And that was the question. You said, why do we do this? And it goes to, well, why do we want that in the first place? And if we
mm,
can answer that to ourselves, it starts opening up more doors into and possibilities into thinking differently as well.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to go back to the lack versus abundance mindset.
Hmm.
I truly believe that it has just like forever been a generational thing. That our grandparents, our great grandparents, our parents, it was, and actually, it's how our brains are wired. So because our brains are wired for safety, our brains are looking for danger, which ultimately means it's wired to look for what's missing, and
Hmm.
which means we're not seeing what's there. So a simple example, you can open up the fridge and you can go, like, I don't have food. But if you actually take a moment and go, I can make a meal, it's just a tiny, tiny little tweak, which takes us from the lack to the abundance, because my automatic thought process, it's just a default to what is missing. What is missing, what is wrong, and what could be better.
Hmm.
So you spoke about going from, we're feeling empty or that there's something missing, and ultimately we need to believe that we're whole. I think it's important that people know that that on its own, like you say, going to the gym is a process that happens slowly. You
Hmm.
cannot go from feeling empty and believing that everything is missing in your life, money, relationships, happiness, self-love, and then go, okay, well, now I must be whole. I must be whole. I must be whole. And some people are like, but just think positive thoughts. And I want to smash those people in the face, because I'm like, I promise you, if I could
Hmm.
choose to think positive thoughts, I would. But it's not
Hmm.
as easy as that. It's the default that I have to slowly, slowly start changing.
Hmm. You and my wife would have hit me on the head quite a few times a few years ago because I went through that toxic positivity space and was told exactly all you need to think is positive thoughts and that will just emanate out there. But that's not the reality at all. Um, one of the exercises I actually do love doing when I work with clients is fear goals or fear setting. You know, highlight and paint your biggest fears, the scariest things that you could imagine happening in your life. And there's been some amazing and some scary stuff that's come up, for myself personally as well. And the thing is, like you said, we're conditioned to look for the negative, to look for the problem, and that's what drives us from a neurological perspective, from a survivalist perspective, is the fight, flight, freeze response. But there are actually two more. Once we are able to override fight, flight, or freeze, the next two are feeding. So we want to be able to feed ourselves, right? Make sure the fridge is full. And the other one is fornicating, you know, carrying on the survival of the species. And so, again, how do we shift out of that space? Is that we can say, well, if we're not going to fight, if we're not going to fight it, if we're not going to run away, if we're not going to be paralyzed by it, and if we can overcome those, what are the next two to look at? So how do we feed it, or how do we fornicate with it? And from a business perspective, just playing around with the idea of fornicating, it's taking ideas, different ideas from different departments and all of that, and having these ideas have idea sex and coming up with idea babies and new ideas as well. And that's the way we can thankfully use our minds as well. So moving from that scarcity to that abundant space, saying, I don't have the money right now to pay for the rent, to a space of saying, well, yes, I don't have the money right now, but I can get the money because I do have some time. So rather than freezing in the moment, we can say, well, we've got some time in order to get this. And again, like going to the gym, it's a case of building little habits, micro habits, and then stacking them to create a system so that we can actually shift ourselves day by day. And it's not a case of just having that. I mean, some of us might have an aha moment and just everything falls into place. And that only really happens when we actually are able to shift our beliefs
Mm.
completely. I believe, just to give you an example, I was raised in a multiracial home. And one of the big things that, came up for me and that I've dealt with for quite some time and have moved through was I was taught that Black people are dangerous. And I grew up in fear of Black people. It led to the point where at school, being the only Asian in a white school in '94, when the doors opened for different races to mix, um, I didn't have many friends. I had a Jehovah's Witness who was also kind of frowned upon, but I was only able to make friends with black people, um, and it was a case of just realizing and understanding this belief that black people are dangerous or evil. It's actually not true. And that whole mind shift allowed me to understand a lot
Wow.
deeper, build better relationships. And so, I mean, that's the same thing with, with whatever we're thinking, do I desperately need this money to pay for the rent? That's what you believe.
Mm.
But what if you could believe something else? What if the belief was, instead of I need to go out and grind and make money so I can pay the rent, to a case of, I believe now that I want to, as opposed to I need to, I want to go out and serve more people so I can make money. And you know what? Because of that, that money is going to allow me to be in a home, in a space that I create for myself, so that I do feel safe, that I do feel comfort and nurtured and all of that.
Mm. Mm. I do have a belief that your basic needs need to be taken care of before you can do the big work, like the big growing work because while you're stressing about your rent being paid and feeding your children, um, that's all that consumes you. And yes, we're giving people tools, and I want to go into two more things in a moment. But if that can be your focus, is to get your rent paid, your food paid, that your very basic needs
Mhm.
are covered, then I truly believe that you can step into the world of completely changing all of the stuff. I really,
Mhm.
really do. And I know people, but at the same time, I want to pause there and just share some really vulnerable, real, really cool stories about times when I really had no money and I had no idea how I was going to pay my rent. And the miracles that came through. I went through about 2.5 years where it was really touch and go. Like I got money, then I didn't have money, and then I'd have 3 months, and then I wouldn't have for 3 months. And I was trying to get a business up and running, and it was freaking scary.
Mhm.
And this one liner, which if people are sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, like, what is it? What is it? Like, this got me through. The reason I don't have it is because I don't need it. And when I need it, I will have it. And I
Mhm.
wrote that everywhere. I would just be in my car and I would see the petrol light going on, and I'd be like, the reason I don't have it is because I know I can go at least 2 days with the petrol lights on. The reason I don't have it is because I don't need it, and when I need it, I'll have it. And
Mhm.
by the absolute grace of God, miraculousness, it always came in when I needed it. So a
Mhm.
parent who owed me money from 2 months ago would suddenly put money in my bank account. I didn't want my kids to know that I was struggling because I didn't want to instill that into them. So we just
Mhm.
carried on as if life was fantastic, and I
Mhm.
would create opportunities that don't cost lots of money. Luckily, I live in a space where there's a lot for the kids to do. But yeah, I remember the one day, literally, it was like the day before they were going back to their dad. I needed to get one more meal out, and I literally had no food in the house. So I scrounged around and I found enough change to get pup and 2 tomatoes and an onion at the tuck shop in my complex. And I cooked up pup and gravy for dinner. Well, can I tell you
Mhm.
something? The miraculousness of this. My kids were like, Mom, this is the best food we've ever eaten. And it's now become a family tradition that every time they come to me, we have to make pumpkin sauce.
Mhm.
And I'm like, holy moly, not only did I feed my kids, but like they loved it. And they didn't even know there was anything wrong.
Mhm.
So like wow, 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 wow. And I mean I've got so many examples of that. I think what really got me through those times was a deep knowing that this is not forever. and
Mm-hmm.
that it was a stage in my life that was going to get me from where I am to where I'm going to be, and that I knew that gratitude was the answer. Gratitude was the answer. Gratitude was, it's very hard to be grateful when you are trying to scrape your pennies together. But I
Mm-hmm.
would eat the cabbage while my kids are away and just be grateful that I was going to bed with a full tummy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to sit there and go, like, I'm so poor, my life is a mess, da da da, because that, yeah, that's easy to do. But it's
Mm-hmm.
not easy to go, I'm so grateful, thank you that I'm not going to bed hungry. And yeah, so that's a big thing. And then at the very base of that, you've touched on it, fears. Those fears are literally, like, to me, dragons, shadows, darkness. But
Mm-hmm.
the acronym for fear is false
That's
evidence
definitely.
appearing real. False
Yeah.
evidence appearing real. So those fears are rooted in the past,
Mm-hmm.
or it's because we've played out the worst case scenario into the future. So when you said bring yourself into the now, present now, take a deep breath, we really mean now. Like, not even like tomorrow, like now, right now. My rent needs to be paid. No, it doesn't. You've got 5 days. Anything can
Mm-hmm.
happen in 5 days. But we have this mindset that we need to know, and we need to know way in advance. And as long as I've got money put away for the next 3 years, until then, I can't relax.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a saying that says the present is a gift. And it's a play on words, but I really do believe that. If you can
Mm-hmm.
find those moments to get present, you will realize that the problem exists in the past or in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. You kind of took everything I wanted to say away already.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. I did actually make a couple of notes. And one of the big things that you brought up, and for me as well, is, finding ourselves in the space of panic or stress or anxiety. For me, it was a case of, different things in my life. And one of the big things that pulled me through was this too shall pass, because that's the reality. Everything happens and it passes. And it's how we actually show up that makes the big difference. You touched on, you mentioned gratitude, and that's where I wanted to go. It's so difficult to be grateful when we have an empty stomach, or when we know we're 3 months behind on the bond or anything like that. And I know how that feels. I was in a space as well where the banks were ready to foreclose on my property a decade or so ago, and I had the sheriff knocking at my door, and I was terrified. I didn't even know what I was going to tell my wife, because I'd fallen behind on the bond repayments. I hadn't told her, and it was a big, it was crazy. And you know, looking back, it's easy to say now that passed, but when you're in the thick of things, it's so difficult to take a breath and just say, well, what am I actually grateful for right now?
Mm.
And that I feel is where a lot of the times, and with the clients that I've worked with as well, I recently worked with a client who struggling with finances, and we went through a process, and one of the exercises was a gratitude list, and he drew a line through the place where he answered, and I went back to him. I said, "Are you grateful for nothing?" And he says, "I'm grateful to God." But I said, "So how's that helping you in your life right now? God isn't giving you the job, and I might be blaspheming a bit here, but you can pray as much as you want, but it actually takes action as well. So that's part of the
Faith
process as
without
well."
works is dead.
Exactly. We think a lot of these things, and from my own personal experience, it was I had a similar thing. One of the exercises that I had in grit growth, funny enough, was to go and write a post-it, and I didn't. And for a week, I kind of thought about it. I thought about it, and then I finally got to the point where I actually wrote it down. And just writing it down, taking that small action, shifted something inside of me as well. It took away the scariness of it at the end of the day, and that's part of, again, chasing after something and being desperate around something. We think about it all the time, so much so that it consumes us. And what happens then is we also get these negative emotions around it, and sometimes even a sense of entitlement. Sometimes we have gone through shit in our lives and we think, I've been through so much, I deserve this or I deserve that. Well, we get exactly what we deserve at the end of the day. And that's what karma is all about. And so the more we show up uh, in a higher vibrational state, in terms of not coming with these negative emotions and all of that. And you brought up something which is really beautiful, the pup and gravy story. You went in there not showing the kids the desperation, not showing them the lack, but giving them a different perspective, saying, well, listen, we're doing something a bit more traditional now, pup and gravy. They didn't and you showed up with that. You didn't go in and say, there's only pup and gravy to eat. That's all we've got because that's only, we don't have money for anything else. It's become a family tradition now, and it's become something beautiful because you went in there from a space of gratitude that you were able to rub your 2 10 cents together and get the 2 tomatoes and the onion. But what it created was a bond between yourself and your children.
Mm.
And that's what it's really about. When we're chasing something, um, it's a very masculine energy as well. It's like that hunter-gatherer mentality. We go out and we're hunting these things. That things are going to run away. If you're walking in the bush and you're trying to catch an impala, it's going to run away. Same thing
Yeah,
happens with money. Same
exactly.
thing happens if you want to relocate to another province for why? Because you want a
Yeah,
better life. But
yeah,
when we start taking that need and actually shifting the perspective of it being a need to a want, I need to pay the rent, makes you feel kind of yucky.
mm.
But if you change that and say, well, I actually
That's
want to
one
pay the
tweak.
rent. I want to
One
pay the
tweak
rent.
in your words, yes. One
Yeah.
tweak in your words. And
Yeah.
it's even
One
even
little
as you're
word.
paying your bills, that resentment of I've got to pay my bills and I get to
Hmm.
pay my bills.
Hmm.
And be grateful for the service that the bills are providing, right?
Exactly.
There's one thing quickly that came up is when you're speaking about toxic positivity, and then we
Hmm.
went on to gratitude. I think there's such a fine line. So it's not about saying, it's not about trying to gaslight yourself. So
Mm.
a lot of us were raised like, be grateful. You're so ungrateful. And then
Mm.
when you're in a really big pickle and life is really hard and you're really struggling, you hear this voice that says, but there's people worse off than you. And I
Hmm.
hate that. I hate
Me
that
too.
because those people are not living my journey. And right now, my journey is freaking hard.
Hmm.
So I think a big part of what we don't do is take a moment to go, like, I wouldn't choose this and I don't want it. And it's freaking hard. But I know that I can do this and I know I have what it takes to get through this because when I look back, I literally know that I've gotten through every single hard thing. But we
Hmm.
mustn't skip over the part that I'm struggling. I'm struggling and this is
Mm.
hard. And then not to tip over to self-pity, because then again,
Mm.
we're going to start looking at all the things that we don't have. So when it comes
Hmm.
to gratitude, somebody asked me this question the other day. They were like, what in your life do you have? Is there more good in your life or is there more bad? And I wasn't having a good day. And I was like, well, today it's more bad. And he was like,
Hmm.
okay, think about when you wake up in the morning. What has to happen for you to wake up in the morning? And I was like, okay, my heart needs to be beating, my lungs
Hmm.
need to be working, my bladder needs to be working. There is a doctor for every single organ in your body that is a specialist in that field because that's how many things can go wrong.
Hmm.
And you wake up and you get up and you go to work and you don't know that there's 3,000 things going right now in your body that you don't even know.
Hmm.
And so it's about saying what is going right. And it's the little things, it's not the big things. When you flush the toilet, I have water.
Hmm.
And for me, the word thank you emits a different energy. And even if in the beginning it feels like it's really hard to find, like, okay, list 10 things. There's no ways I'm gonna find 10 things. Just start with one.
Hmm.
And slowly but surely your brain is going to start to look for different things. And eventually you're going to go to two, to three, to four. I've done this with activities before where people are like,
Hmm.
when I started the training, I couldn't find three. Now I could write 3 pages because the next day they're going into the day going, well, tonight I have to write a gratitude list. I better start looking for things. And you'll always find it. You'll
Hmm.
always find it, you know, the smells of the coffee, the food, the freshly cut grass, the senses that we have and the quality of life that we have because of the sense of sight and hearing and touch and but it's about reprogramming
Hmm.
and like one little bit at a time. And to me, really, Quan, it's about strengthening your mind. Like your mind is getting so much stronger through this process.
Hmm.
So you were speaking a lot about energy, and I don't want to go deeply into the science because I'm conscious of
Hmm.
time, but we are all energy. If you look at my hand underneath a microscope, it's not still like I'm looking at now. And if you don't know, if
Exactly.
you don't believe me, just put two hands together a little bit apart and you can feel the heat energy. And so that is the energy that we put out, and it's either positive or it's either negative. And when it is chasing, like you said, it chases things away. So the only thing that I can say is about leaning back, noticing that your nervous system is completely dysregulated and that you are
Hmm.
in complete fight or flight, or that you are just so desperate that it's consuming you, and breathing and getting into some simple tools like gratitude. I don't need it right now. When I need it, I'll have it. Um,
Hmm.
Another thing that I've realized is if I got what I wanted when I needed it, it would have been a failure. Like it would,
Hmm.
if I had what what I have in grit now, when I started 5 years ago, I wouldn't be able to because there was
Hmm.
so much inside of me that needed to grow in 5 years for me to sustain what I have now. Does that make sense?
Completely. I mean, just to from a financial background and the stats that show is that wealth created in one generation gets handed to the second generation. By the third generation, that wealth is completely disappeared, has completely disappeared.
Wow.
And just talking to exactly that, what happens is parents give their kids what they never had, and a lot of the time it's been the transfer of wealth now, giving the kids the iPad at the age of 12 or this or that, whatever the case may be, all these things that they never had has made them a lot less resilient, has made them a lot less
Mhm.
equipped to actually show up in the world. I mean, I've worked with clients who've given their children everything, and their children struggle financially, even though there's a successful business that they could step into, take over, and all of these things. It's just sometimes things that are too easy
Mhm.
literally don't help us grow. It happens in nature as well. I'm an avid gardener, and I look at some of my trees and things that I grow. I've got a little greenhouse, and the stuff that grows in the greenhouse, I've got an avocado tree that grows in there. It's got a very thin stalk, bright green leaves, and it looks really great. I took it out of the greenhouse, and within 3 days, the leaves are completely burnt. It started sagging because it didn't build up resilience. It didn't build up any grit being exposed to the hardships of what we know as life, and that's what happens for us is as we go through these difficulties, they're put there for a reason. They're there to help us awaken our minds and to grow into the person that we're meant to be. And again, just touching on that gratitude, because I believe as well that this is one of the most important things, is that we've got to be so grateful for the fact that we can wake up, take a breath in, open our eyes, and be able to even just communicate with someone else, whatever our needs are at the end of the day. So
It's the
we
little things that we miss that
Mhm.
make us miserable because those little things add up so quickly. And by 8 o'clock, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed and so full, which
Mhm.
is the opposite of empty and lack.
It's
But
that
that's what
compounding
comes from the
effect.
gratitude.
Hmm. And just, when I mentioned earlier that client that I did the gratitude exercise with, I forced him to sit down with me. So in a sense, forced that. I didn't really force him. I said, look, in order for us to move forward, we have to go through this. And we grow through what we go through. And it took us about an hour of backwards and forwards and discussing and things like that for him to actually start writing that one thing. And as soon as he wrote that one thing down, he said, well, okay, I'm so grateful for my children. Oh, wow, I'm grateful that my kids are working. And then the list got bigger and bigger. I promise you, it was within a week from there his entire demeanor had changed. I got a call from his sponsor, who paid for him to do the work for me with me, and he said to me, you know, whatever you've done is amazing because he's not as negative as he is anymore. He's
Wow.
got a fresher outlook on life. The week after when I met him again, he'd actually got an increase at his job. And it was just literally about having these conversations. You know, one of the things I said to him, you know, be grateful that you can go to your boss and tell him, look,
Mm,
this is what I'm doing, and I believe that I'm adding so much value that I could be earning more. And he did
mm.
that then. And then it has, and
Wow.
it was
It
all these
snowballs.
small
It
little
does, it
steps.
snowballs.
It snowballs, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a book called, I think, The 1%, which is based on the British cycling Olympic cyclist that won the gold medal. And it was literally changing 1% in different areas. So, you know, if we're chasing something, we're so focused on this one thing, and we put all of our energy into that. And you know, we forget about all these other things in our life, all these other elements or these spheres in our lives. So I mean, if it's a case of finances and you're focusing all your energy on that because you need it so
Mm,
desperately, other areas in your life are going to fail as well. Your health is going to fail, your relationships are going
mm.
to fail. The biggest thing for me and for myself and in working with my clients was a case of self-worth. And that again came to the conditioning that we had growing up. So once we start to see ourselves as worthy of it, it shows up more and more in our lives as well.
And that on its own is a daily practice. That is a muscle that has to be developed. So if
Hmm.
anybody's sitting here listening to this and thinking, oh, like I know there's so much to do, like there's so much to do. There's gratitude I have to do. I have to change my mindset from lack to positive. I have to not need the things I've always, it's a lot. I
Hmm.
just want you to know that it changes very quickly if you're just consistent with it. It's within the consistency that you start to literally quickly notice big results. The problem is most people don't have the staying power. And so 5 days in, they notice the results, and then we self-sabotage because we forget that we need to keep working. And so
Hmm.
3 months later, you're like, your brain is like, I don't have what it takes. You see, it never works, and then we give up. So baby steps, and I feel like in a lot of the videos that I watch, the missing piece is to acknowledge where you are and to be where you are and to feel where you are, and don't ignore those feelings. Feel them, process them, like you said. Take deep breaths, let them come up, give them attention, and then get into all the stuff that we've said. But we can't bypass that because our emotions are really just very, very important to feel. But I feel like there's a whole lot more and more interviews that will come up with different themes that have come up through this. Is there anything you want, like what is your biggest take home that you would like people to take from this?
So just to add on to what you said now, and it's so critical, being able to sit with it and work through it, whatever it is that we're going through, acknowledging it and all of it as well. One of the biggest things I find that helps accelerate the process is to be part of a community, being part of a like-minded community where we're on a similar path. At the end of the day, you might be struggling financially, I might be struggling emotionally with relationships and connecting with people. We all have our challenges. The feelings that we have, though, are universal. We all feel crappy. We all feel that we're not good enough. We all feel that we're imposters, all of those things. And just to know that someone else is feeling the same way, but I can see you from a different perspective, allows me to share that perspective with you. And the same, likewise,
Mm.
you've been able to share things about me that I don't see within myself, and that's part of part of the journey is that we can walk with these blinkers on, thinking one thing, and we might even think we're God's gift to planet Earth, but it's what everyone else around us perceives from us as well. And that again comes
People,
back to an
like-minded
energy state.
people, absolutely, like-minded people who have the same goals helps you to see that you're not crazy, that you're not broken, and that
Hmm.
yes, our stuff is different, but it's actually so similar. And until I felt seen, understood, validated, I actually was stuck. I was stuck in my past, stuck in blaming everyone else.
Hmm.
And the minute I was like, okay,
Hmm.
it was my reality. And if nobody else agrees with me, that's also okay. But for me, it was my reality. Okay, now I can move
Hmm.
forward. So what community are you speaking about
Hmm.
exactly? I
I
mean,
don't
I'd
know.
love for people to join the, yes,
So Grit Grow is definitely a fantastic community that I've been a part of now. And yeah, just connecting with people inside there and just sharing what we've been sharing. It's just been really awesome. That being said, community isn't just a single bubble. I mean, life isn't just a single bubble. There's a bigger ecosystem out there. So I'm actually part of a couple of groups, and one of them, quite recently, I've actually had quite a negative experience in that, uh, and in that, I've actually been able to reflect in myself and grow further. Also knowing that, sometimes we may feel something is right at the moment, and that's the thing. It could be right in the moment, and that's why it's so important to be present as much as possible, because as soon as I had so many ideas and fantasies about where this could all go, and that this is such an amazing group of men that I'm working with, and all of that could be taken away in an instant. And so
literally.
just it's about creating an ecosystem around yourself, and connecting to people as much as you can. Because at the end of the day, I mean, just touching on money again, something a rabbi said to me once was, why are we the only species on the planet that has to pay for our food? And it's quite an interesting thought,
Mm,
right? Well, number one, there's a whole thing about the commercialization and industrialization of food and all of that taking away power and ownership of what we could do ourselves. We could grow our own veggies in the backyard. It could be a side hobby. That's what I do as well. Um, but at the end of the day, you put it so beautifully in that it forces us as individuals to actually go out and connect with other individuals, because that's what we are. We are social beings. We are here on this planet to connect with one another in as many ways as we can, and to learn to grow together in a sense. This is part of maybe my little fantasies, that we reach the state of enlightenment as a species, as a human
mm,
species, so that we can stop worrying about the wars or fighting about things that at the end of the day, I don't want to say are irrelevant, but in the bigger scheme of things, is actually holding us back from achieving our true potential as human beings.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so people need to join this community. And oh, there was something you said that I just want to end off with.
Hmm.
Uh, actually, no, I'm not supposed to say it because it just flew out of my head. So that's always a
Okay.
sign. Oh,
Hmm.
I always say, okay, so this looks amazing and it seems amazing and I'm so excited about it. This is either the best next thing or my biggest next lesson. Let's go.
Yeah, I
And
love
you
it.
don't really know until you get there, until you're in it, right? So,
100%.
but the Quest community has been amazing. So we're gonna put the link to the Quest community in this video. Please, please join. I know there's so many social media platforms out there that people feel overwhelmed. Wow, wow, wow. But I really think that it isn't that. It's a space to come to, even if it's once a week, where you can connect with like-minded people, relate to what they're saying. Doesn't have to be an everyday overwhelming thing.
Mm.
And then your biggest take home?
Yeah, so Grid Quest has definitely been, being in it for, I think it's about 2 months now. No, day 20, yeah, it's about a month and a half. having all of these things out there, I found that this has really been not comfortable, but it feels comfortable in that it's a safe space where I've been able to show up, say things that's on my mind, and not be blasted about it, knowing that, we're all here to hold space for one another with compassion, care, and kindness.
Mm,
And so that's for me, the takeaway is that there are these pockets out there that we can connect to. And as we grow, it just means that more and more people are going to benefit from this. And yeah, it's not necessarily easy. Sometimes it's quite difficult, but it's like going to the gym. You
mm,
build the muscles and you get stronger, and then you get
mm.
better at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yes, and for me, my biggest take home is really just like small, consistent steps add up quicker than what you think. You just got to keep going. And then the things like having community just helps to support you along the way because
Mhm.
it's already a lonely journey. You don't need to make it more lonely.
Mhm.
And that's us. Thank you so much for watching. And like I said, we're going to definitely, I've got about 15 topics I wrote down here that we can unpack one at a time. Thank you so much for being with me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for listening, everyone.